this assignment with not a lesson yet, but like I was saying earlier, a nudge in the direction that we are going. All right? The nudge in the direction that we are going is this. The final answer to all these questions looks like what? Like, well, what is it written as? What are we trying to figure out here? X, right? So the final answer to all these questions is always X equals something. Yes? Everybody cool? All right. What this means is, now, if I were to put this on a graph, if there was no squared there, it would make a straight line, yes? We've talked about this from last year. Since there's a squared there, it's going to make a curved line, a parabola. So the point I'm trying to make here, and what we are going to be getting into very soon, I'm just giving you like a sneak preview. When X equals something, that is the two spots on the X-axis that the curve will hit. Okay? So this one hits at -2 and 3, which means the answer to this is -2 or 3. So for example, it would be this, x plus 2, x minus 3, which would be x squared minus x minus 6. If I put that on a graph, it would look like this and cross at 2, -2, and +3. Is everybody cool? Now, the question somebody always asks, but Mr. Myers, we just did a bunch of questions where the answers were barfy, like -2 plus or minus root 11, right? And you said that that's how you want your answers written. That is how I want my answers written. But does that allow us to graph it? No. To graph this, we would, of course, have to use the approximation of root 11, right? Which is like 3.2 or whatever it is, right? So this would be -2 plus 3.2, which would be positive 1.2, and -2 minus 3.2, which would be minus 5.2. And then its graph would look, negative 5.2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.2, and positive 1.2 would be right there, and it would look like that. Is everybody cool? Just like in the 10th grade when you had x minus 7 equaled y, and you knew how to graph it. You went down to -7, you gave it a slope of +1, and you went out to +7 and you did that. Right? Well, when you solve this and you take out the y and you give it a 0, then x equals 7, yeah? And right there, x would be 7 because I rose 7 and I ran 7. Is everybody cool? Okay, so here's what I want you to do on this page. We're going to do the first one together. I want you to do all of these. Solve them any way you can. I will remind you the two ways you have to solve these are factoring, and right now you have complete the square. Unless, of course, you're from another country and then you are going to, whether it's easier or not, you are going to use the quadratic formula. I cannot stop you. I do not know why, because both this one, certainly, if you can do it, is far easier than running through the quadratic formula. But I've been teaching long enough to know every kid from everywhere else automatically uses the quadratic formula. That's fine. These are your two choices. Okay? Sometimes factoring will work. Sometimes it's just a part of completing the square. All right? So let's look at this one. We'll do this one together. Can I factor that? Are there factors of 8 that add to 6? Yes, there are. What are they? 4 and 2. And since that's negative, it has to be x minus 4 and x minus 2 equals 0, yes? And of course, we remember the shortcut, as soon as you see this, you know it has to be 4 and 2. But what we're actually doing there, and I want to remind you of this again because a great many of you seem to have lost this thread. This means that x minus 4 has to equal 0, or x minus 2 has to equal 0, right? Which means x will equal 4, or x will equal 2. The new thing I want you to do now is I want you to sketch that graph. Just sketch, because the only thing you know is positive 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4, right? It's the only thing you know. Then give me the curve, because you don't know how far down it's going or anything like that. So I don't even need the curve. I just want you to put the dots on a sketch. Is everybody cool? Now I want to show you something, please. Let's pretend that I wrote this question like this. Equals -8. And I wrote it like this. A lot of you, because you're looking for the right method to do a question. A lot of you, if I wrote it this way, would automatically go to completing the square, I think. Right? Is this true? So a bunch of you might go, okay, well that cuts in half. That's -3 squared is +9. So you've got x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals -8 plus 9 is 1, yeah? Right? And then that would be x plus, not plus, you idiot, x minus 3 squared would equal 1, yes? And then x minus 3 would equal plus or minus the square root of 1, yes? What is the square root of 1? 1. So x equals 3 plus or minus 1, which is 3 plus 1, 4, 3 minus 1, 2. Please notice both ways will give you the right answer. All right? Now, why I'm saying this is because maybe before you decide to complete the square, this method, you might want to check that if you bring this guy back over here and make that 0, if this factors, then you could just factor. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do I care what method you use? No. I remind you all there is a third method coming that always works. You are welcome to use it like our Brazilian friends on every question. You are welcome to do that. But like I say, it requires a good deal of calculation, and there's a bunch of negative numbers involved. And when you guys work with negative numbers, often you make a mistake. And you then refuse to check your work over at the end and hand it in wrong. So I am just warning you. It behooves you, which is a $5 word that says it's a good idea. It's a good idea for every one of you to learn all 3 methods. Everybody understand? Okay? It's kind of like saying, well, I'm going to build a house. I'm going to use power tools. But you still know how to saw a piece of wood or hammer a nail or screw in a screw without the power tools. Everybody good? All right. I want you guys right now to finish this page. Now, there's a couple of weird ones in here. For example, take a look at number 4. Barf. But, like I say, you all know how to deal with this. Right? You know how to make every one of these questions look like something you can do in grade 11. Everything else, you're already supposed to know. There's 5 questions left. It's 8:40. I should think I could be able to come around and see all 5 of these questions done by 9 a.m. 4 minutes per question. You can work together. You can use your notes. It's not a quiz. I don't even know if I'm going to mark it, but I'm going to come around and see how much you did. Okay? Go. All right. Let's see what we're dealing with. Got a few done? Sweet. 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 Sweet, sweet, sweet. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Sweet, sweet. Sweet. Sweet, 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 sweet. All right. So, I don't know. Some of you like to think this way, right? With a series of choices to make, binary choices. Do this or that. So if this type of thinking helps you, you're welcome to write it down. I do not care. It's been recorded if you want to go back and have a look at it. So when I look at this, does it factor? 2 times 7 is 14. Are there any factors of 14 that add to 4? No. So I cannot factor it. So now I'm down here. I have a choice now to quadratic formula. 8 or 10 of you know this. So you could use it. After today, you're all going to know it. All of you know complete the square now. So right now, you have to complete the square. Right? So, how do I complete the square? 2x squared plus 4x equals negative 7. I move that over. Divide everything by 2. X squared plus 2x equals negative 7 halves. Half of 2 is what? Divide by 2 and square to get x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals negative 7 halves. Yes? X plus 1 squared equals negative 7 halves. Oh, yes, thank you. Plus 1 x squared plus 2 halves is negative 5 halves, right? Because it's negative 7 plus 1, right? Right? X plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of negative 5 halves. Why must I stop there? What allows me to stop there? This is knowledge from previous classes. Has nothing to do with grade 11. Pardon me, Burke? You don't need to move the 1 over because something is wrong right now. What is wrong? You can't have a square root of a negative number because it doesn't exist. Which means, in this question, x can't equal anything, can it? So what would it look like on a graph? Is there anywhere on here that I can put dots like here? No. So we cannot put this on a graph. There is no x value for it, or no x root. We'll talk about what that means in a minute. What this would look like as a graph is it would be either up here and not touching the x. That's where it has to be. Okay, but we're going to come back to that later. Right now, no x's. Let's look at number 3. What should we do with number 3? Does it factor? Of course not. So it's negative 2x squared plus 4x equals 5, right? Negative 5. Everybody's cool there, yeah? What comes out here? Negative 2, leaving me with x squared, yeah? Minus 2x, yeah? Half of negative 2 is what? 1, negative 1. Negative 1 squared is what? Positive 1. Equals, what did I add to the left? Negative 2 times 1 is what? Negative 2. So what do I got to add on the right? Negative 2. Negative 2x minus 1 squared equals negative 7. Now what? X plus 1. Took out a, no. I was right the first time. X minus 1. Now what? X minus 1 squared equals what? Positive 7 over 2, because they're both negative, yes? X minus 1 equals plus or minus the root of 7 over 2. And then now, is this enough to put it on a graph? Could I use that knowledge to give me the 2 dots? I could, couldn't I? I don't need to simplify that anymore, right? Because can I use my calculator to tell me the square root of 7 over 2, approximately? Then can I add negative 1 to it? And then can I subtract negative 1 from it? So we could do it, yes? If I just wanted dots on the graph, we could do it right here, right? So here we could graph it, and we're going to get into that very soon. Or here, and I'll change color, we could simplify. And when we simplify that, it is negative 1 plus or minus the root of 7 over the root of 2, yes? Which is negative 1 plus or minus the root of 14 over 2, yes? Right? Which we could simplify. That's technically as simple as it gets, but some people don't like that little equal won't erase for some reason. Some people don't like this. They like it to be all 1. Which would mean this would be negative 2 plus or minus root 14 over 2. I don't like that. I like that. Everybody cool? Yeah? All right. What's weird about 4? What makes 4 yucky? I don't like that fraction. Do I know how to get rid of that fraction? How? By by 2. I multiply this whole thing by 2, I'm in business. X squared minus 4x plus 14 equals 0. Then check, does it factor? Doesn't factor. X squared minus 4x equals negative 14. Square that side, or half it and square it. What is it? Plus 4, x minus 2 squared equals negative 10. X minus 2 equals plus or minus root negative 10. Can I stop? Why? Doesn't exist. What makes 5 and 6 ugly? What makes 5 and 6 ugly? I've got a coefficient and it's negative. But does it change? How do I get rid of it? When it was positive 5, would have divided everything by 5, right? So when it's negative 5, what do I divide it all by? Negative 5. No factors of 6 that multiply to 4, so I run it through the completing the square equals added 4 to both sides, 10. X plus 2 equals plus or minus root 10. X equals negative 2 plus or minus root 10. Now, from there, to put it on a graph, I need to use my calculator. Either find the square root of 10 and add, or since we were just sketching, the square root of 10 is about 3, isn't it? Right? A little bit more than 3. Right? So negative 2 plus a little bit more than 3 is a little bit more than 1, yeah? So there's 1, so my first dot will be a little bit more than 1. And negative 2 minus a little bit more than 3 would be negative 5, a little bit more than negative 5. And that's where your 2 dots would be. Is everybody cool with finding the dots? What part of it is not cool, Ayaka?
Oh, no, I'm okay.
Okay, then. Then why were you doing this?
Oh, no, nothing. I'm just...
Okay.
It's complicated right now.
Divide by negative 1, yeah? Right? X squared plus 3x minus 3 equals 0. X squared plus 3... Why don't you erase anymore? 3x equals 3. 3 over 2 squared is 9/4, so I add 9/4 to both sides. Equals fourths, that's 12/4, 21/4, yes? And then square root both sides, x plus 3/2 plus or minus root 21/4, which is, of course, root 21 over 2, right? Mm-hmm. So x equals negative 3/2 plus or minus root 21 over 2. Can I combine them? Yep. Negative 3 plus or minus root 21 over 2. Then if I was going to put it on a graph, I'd use my calculator or I would estimate. The root of 21 is about 4.5. Yes? Negative 3 plus 4.5 is negative 1.5. Negative 1.5 divided by 2 is negative 0.75. Negative 3 minus 4.5 is negative 7.5. Negative 7 divided by 2 is negative 3.5, right? So it would be negative 7.5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there. Everybody good?
Here's number 4 again,
Can everybody complete the square? Silence. Only answer to this is yes. Can everybody understand that the x's give me the dots where it's going to cross the x-axis? These dots, which we are going to talk about later again and again and again, are called roots. Okay? Okay, all this has been recorded. Please turn to page 80. And let us now learn the third and final method that always works.
Is the test until there?
Huh?
Is the test until there?
What test?
Tomorrow, you said you're going to have the quarter
Yeah.
quiz.
Yeah. It'll be up to this. It'll be 2.0 and 2.1. Or 2.1, whatever. I can't remember how I did the categories.
So we don't getting this now.
This will not be on your quiz tomorrow. Here is the quadratic formula. It is hideous. I will never make you memorize it, even though a great many of your peers have memorized it. You do not need to memorize it. I will always give it to you, but you do need to know how to use it. Before I get into how to use it, as always, I will show you where it comes from. What is that? You have seen something that looks just like that without the squared in the 10th grade. What you have seen is this. What did we call that? You already said it, Louis. General form. General form? Yes, sir. General form of a line, right? This is general form of a parabola. And we're going to talk about those a ton. Is everybody good? What is our goal whenever we see variables? If we have a single variable, what's our goal? Find x. Now, on a line up here, there's going to be one x, yes? Where it crosses the x-axis. But here there's going to be two. So our goal is to get x by itself. Agreed? What is the first thing you would do to get x by itself here? Again, don't look at it like, oh my God, there's a's and b's. Just, if I gave you this, 3x squared plus 6x equaled 7. What's the first thing you would do there if we were in pre-calc 11? You just did it 6 times. Like 10 seconds ago, you did this 6 times. What? Before you complete the square there. What do you got to do with that before you can complete the square? Divide it by 3. So what am I going to do here? Same thing. So somebody tell me what that is. There's 30 brains in here. Somebody tell me. And it can't be Deepinder because he knows every answer. What did you do here? Divided by what? 3. Why did you divide by 3? I got all day, ladies and gentlemen. Why did you divide by 3? To get the x isolated. So, what am I going to do here. Divide by A. Awesome. Right? Now, come back to here. 3x squared plus 6x plus 7 equals 0. You've divided by 3. What did you do next? Now you've got x squared plus 6x equals, plus 7/3 equals 0. Now what did you do? You moved the 7/3. So what are we going to do here? Move the c divided by a. So x squared plus b over ax. And then we're going to leave a space now, yes? Negative c over a. Now what would I do? Right, I'd complete the square, yes? Now to complete the square, that means I got to divide this by 2, correct? So that is b over a times 1/2, yes? And then what do I do with that? Square it. What's b times 1? B. And then squared is what? B squared. What's a times 2? 2a. Then squared? 4a squared. Yes? So what is getting written right here? B squared over 4a squared. Is everybody cool? Now, what did I add to this side? That. So what do I add over here? Same thing. Is everybody good? What is our next step here? So up here, I've got x squared plus 6x equals negative 7/3. Half it, square it, plus 9. Plus 9. Now what would I do here? Again, you've just done it 10 times. You'd factor it. And it would be x plus 3, right? So factor this side. What is this going to become? Well, you know it's the square root of that and the square root of that, right? So this must be x plus b over 2a squared. Agreed? Equals over here. Now, what can I do with this? Can I get a common denominator? What is it? Is it going to be a or 4a squared? 4a squared, which means this had to multiply by 4a, didn't it? 4a. So what do I have to do to his partner? Same thing. So now what do I have up here? Negative 4ac plus b squared. Right? What do I do now to get rid of this squared? Again, you're just working on what you already know. Square root. X plus b over 2a equals what over here? Plus or minus the square root of. Now, we're going to change the order here, right? Because we like b's first. 4ac over 4a squared, yeah? Everybody still okay? All right. Now what? We're trying to isolate x, so what's got to move now? X equals negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. What is the square root of 4a squared? 2a. Are these the same now?
Yeah.
So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And that is where we get that. What did we do? We completed the square. We did exactly like what we did here, what we just did 10 times, we did it here with letters. Now, if it works once in math, how many times will it work? Always. So back in the day when people were messing around with numbers and they noticed that completing the square would work, they then said, wait a minute, it always works. If something always works, then we get to make a formula, don't we? Because the area of a rectangle is always length times width. So this is just completing the square. Everybody cool? Now, the only thing that makes it difficult is to remember this, right? The A goes everywhere you see an A, no matter what the value is. So if this was negative 5, what would I put in for that A? Negative 5. The B goes everywhere you see a B. This one messes everyone up. Is this B here positive or negative? Positive. So here it's negative, right? What if this was negative bx? What would I be writing here? Positive b. And c, of course, goes there. Is everybody cool? Now, you are all on the same page as all of our Brazilian and Japanese and Chinese friends. And Korean. Your job tonight, those 3 questions, you have a quiz tomorrow. There's A, there's B, there's C. A, B, C. 3 questions and a quiz tomorrow. Factoring and completing the square.
Mr. Myers.
Mr. Fogarty.
I have good news for you.
Do you?
My doctor said the reason I fall asleep so much is because my eyes are tired from focusing.
I don't doubt it. I had the same problem growing up.
So,
I'd
this
like
class
to...
I had no problems
Good.
staying awake. So
I noticed that.
I got everything down.
And it's a Monday morning.
I know.
See you later.